Hello, welcome everybody back to the Inside Our Galaxy podcast. I'm your host, Eric Hernandez. As always, we got to talk about our two games that happened over the week. We got to talk about our first one against the Colorado Rapids, which was a 3-1 win, and then our final home game of the regular season, which was a 2-1 win against Austin. So we're going to talk about those games, give our recaps, our thoughts, our opinions about the game, and everything you just want to hear. We got Galaxy news, of course, and then also a preview for our next game on Decision Day against Houston, which could lead to some implications depending on some outside results and just us as well. Just we need a win, but we're going to preview that as well. And of course, back with me on the saddle is Alex, also known as LA Galaxy Central. It's been a while. How you doing, man? What's up?
It's been a while, honestly. I think the last time I was on here was towards the end of August, right after Leagues Cup ended. I came on for the Atlanta game, and yeah, it's been a while, dude. I've missed about 7 or 8 games on this podcast, and yeah, definitely been a lot of ups for sure. A lot of really good games I missed. Obviously, we had a great week this week. I didn't get to talk about the El Chafico either, which was just an incredible game. The Whitecaps game was really good. So yeah, definitely missed a lot. Definitely missed it. Very happy to be back posting it on here, and yeah, I'm ready to talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we didn't get to talk about the 4-2 week where we had like 3 straight 4-2 results. I mean, I think the first game that I did by myself was the recapping the St. Louis game. So it was previewing into the St. Louis game, which was, it's already been like you said, it was already like a month ago. So yeah, it's been a while, but obviously it's good to have you here. I know some of the people have been, kind of missing you out here. People have been saying like, where's Alex? When is he going to come back on? And, obviously our scheduling and things like that have been, kind of like a little bit difficult to manage that. But now we're glad that that's the case, that, you're back here. Let's talk about LA Galaxy soccer, like it's good to have you back here. Like I said, in one episode, it was like, you're my partner in crime, I got to have you here. And it's good to have you back here to talk about the Galaxy, which right now the vibes are high for the LA Galaxy. And like I mentioned, we had 2 wins this week, one against the Rapids, one against Austin FC, which, let's talk about first the Colorado one, which was almost a week ago, which, it's kind of crazy to say in itself. But yeah, obviously the first one we got to talk about is Colorado Rapids. We go into Colorado, haven't beaten Colorado since I believe it was 2017, which is, a long time. So it's been a while since we've gotten a win there. We needed to get a win, obviously, just to kind of, keep up with the standings. Obviously, we got to look at teams like LAFC who have a game on hand, obviously look at other teams that are, who are also below us. And sorry, I keep hitting my mic, but, also look at teams like, who are below us. So obviously getting a result in Colorado would have been great, or getting a win in Colorado would have done a lot of good things. We end up getting the win there, a 3-1 win. You got goals from Gabriel Peck. You had a goal from Ricky Puig. And then, or actually you had 2 from Ricky Puig, if I remember correctly, right? Or am I tripping out? Yeah, right? Okay, so you got 2 from Ricky Puig in there. So, yeah, 3-1 win in Colorado. How'd you feel about that one going into that game? And obviously, how do you feel about after that result when we got that win against Colorado?
Yeah, obviously I'll get to the game in a second, but I just wanted to say, obviously I took a bit of a break from posting and a break from coming on here, and some people were asking me oh, did you watch the game today? And I just wanted to say, even on here, yes, I've watched every single game we've played in that stretch. I haven't been posting about it, haven't been talking about it on here, but I did watch every single game, so I just wanted to throw that out there. I did get to see everything that happened. I didn't miss a single game.
Well, that is a good thing. You always got to keep up. And yeah, obviously, I know you weren't posting and stuff like that, but I knew you were watching the games. It's still got to watch them. Even if I did the same thing, I was still going to watch the games no matter what, even if I didn't make an episode or post. But obviously, though, since you did watch the games, what was your thoughts about Colorado? How'd you feel about after that win?
Yeah, Colorado, that win was honestly incredible for me, because going into that game in altitude, middle of the week, I thought it was going to be very hard. For me, it kind of was to the point where I think we needed 4 out of 6 points on the road for our final 3 games, or our final 2 games on the road, and obviously we needed to beat Austin. So I kind of thought of the Colorado game as that game where we can maybe just get 1 point, and then on Houston Decision Day is a game we have to get 3 points in order to clinch the Western Conference. But I mean, this Colorado game, especially in the second half, the Galaxy really turned up. I mean, yet again, you look at our DP players, they were absolute difference makers for us. Ricky Puig, 2 goals. Gabriel Peck gets a goal. 3 goals in the second half. You respond from coming from back down to goal down again, which was really good. Just very impressive overall for a midweek game. I was very happy about that. It was a huge win for us to get. And yeah, just really happy about it overall. There's not really too much to add. It was an absolutely massive win to pick up.
Yeah, definitely a massive win. And honestly, I even said, I think the last episode I did, I even said like that Colorado win, is very important because, or if you get a win in Colorado, it'd be very important because maybe you don't have to look at decision day as being this must need win in decision day. Now, obviously, I expect the Galaxy to go out for the win in decision day because the spot isn't clinched yet, right? But the point is, it's like still winning in Colorado would be massive going into Austin or playing against Austin, which we'll talk about later, and then also just in case of what you have to do in decision day against Houston. So getting a win in Colorado was great. Like you mentioned, we were goal down. We started off pretty slow in that game, like we've had seen this Galaxy team do recently. Just start off very slow. Maybe they don't look that great, but then they seemingly find a way to pick it up within the end of the first half, and also in the second half they just took off. They get all the goals. They get the three goals in there. I think they got one goal before the half, if I remember correctly, or did they get all three in the second half? I don't remember. All of them were in the second half. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So my bad. It was just my memory, which just hasn't been there. But point is, like, they still get all the goals in the second half. They still, get the points. And like you mentioned, in altitude, that's a very tough place to go play in. And just in general, I mean, like we mentioned, we haven't won there since 2017. So it's always been a tough place to play for the Galaxy. Yeah, we might have gotten some ties here and there, but we've never really gotten a win in a while. And to go in there, and like you mentioned, midweek, that's a tough thing to do, to go play in the middle of the week. So midweek, going up into Colorado, not an easy thing to do. They managed to get the 3 points, and honestly, like again, there's a lot of vibes and a lot of high hopes for this Galaxy team, and you clearly saw that against this team, or against Colorado, who's a team that's in the playoffs, looking to go climb up higher into the playoff standings as well. So they wanted to go get a win at home, and we managed to just get the 3 points and just call it a day, right? Get the 3 points, get out of there. You go into Austin, or you go back home against Austin, and you play your game there. So it definitely was a massive 3 points to get against Colorado. And Colorado's a good team. Like, they are a really good team. So to get 3-1 against them, it's a pretty big deal, and I'm glad to see that we got that result. Another thing too, like about the Galaxy, I will say, like I know you haven't been on here in a while, but like I mentioned before, we've seen the team like kind of just like start off very slow and then get the result in the end. How have you felt about that, about the Galaxy? Like, do you did that kind of like scare you at first a little bit, or just kind of like, okay, this is just how the team plays now? Like, this is just probably the best way the team plays. Like, how do you feel about the whole, like, I guess, like starting slow and then just building their way into the game later on?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of interesting because, like, you are kind of right. Sometimes in games, they do start a little bit slow, especially on the road. Usually, they're not on the front foot. I just feel like in MLS, that's kind of normal, usually, especially on the road. Like, you're not always going to be on the front foot. I guess what matters ultimately is do we have the quality to produce moments, and do we have the quality to get ourselves back into games? Or do we have the quality to take control of games in any given moment? And the answer for this current version of the Galaxy is yes. So, I mean, yeah, like, you would ideally like to play perfect for 90 minutes, but, if you pick and choose your moments to be lethal and really bury your team and put away your chances, and it works for you, it's like you can continue to do that because it's getting you wins right now.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. Like, and that's the thing though too, because I think a lot of people were kind of be like, oh, why can't this team play well in the first half, and then they seemingly just turn it up, and maybe like, and I don't think I really said this on the show, but like I kind of said, like, the Galaxy have been playing like they are a second half team. Like, it's not just recently. It's kind of been a lot of the season where they seem to have like turn it up in the second half, and honestly, like, it's not a bad thing to say. Like, if that's how this team plays and it gets you the results, then maybe you don't, I guess maybe you don't look at it too much. But I guess it is kind of interesting just how they do start off kind of slow. They don't maybe look as good, but then they find their footing later on honestly within the first half. They find their footing. They maybe get something in at the end of the first half, and then the second half is seemingly where everything goes. And we've seen that a lot already this month, but just in general this season, that's just kind of been the recipe for success. I don't know exactly why that's the case. Maybe they're, like I said, they're just trying to maybe like find their footing within the game, try to find a rhythm, or maybe they're just trying to analyze how the team they're facing is. But it's very interesting for sure. But at the end of the day, it gets your results, and I don't think anybody's complaining after that. But yeah, still though, you get they start off slow and they end up getting the results, and I think getting one in Colorado was just we needed that for sure, and they ended up getting it that week, and that is a very tough thing to do, definitely for sure, and especially in the middle of the week too.
Yeah, honestly, I'd say too for the start of the games, like I feel like it probably is like a getting into rhythm thing because we're a team that likes to play a lot of combination plays, really try to move the ball around, get to certain players in certain positions. And when you're playing a certain opponent, a different opponent every week, obviously it's going to take a little bit of a time to adjust to them, see what their shape is, see what some of the matchups are, see which more matchups are favorable for us than others. So like, I don't even think it's a bad thing. It's like, hey, if you need a little bit of time to like figure this out, it's like, go ahead. The only thing I'd say is like if you do need sort of that adjustment period, well, then the game has to be close. Of course, either we have to have a 1 goal lead or be trailing by 1 goal or have the game tied. Like you can't be like, adjusting to your opponent being 2-0 down. Like, okay, that would be a problem. But if the game is in reach and you're trying to, make certain adjustments, I think that's totally fine to do.
Yeah, definitely for sure. And I don't think it's necessarily a bad like we don't obviously we don't also have to like play like we don't have to score within the first 5 minutes either. Like that's not the case either, right? It's like and yeah, like you got to find the right matchups. Maybe you got to find the way that the team plays as well. And so it's like and yeah, I mean, I guess that is kind of the negative fact about it. Like you said, it's like if the Galaxy managed to find a way to be 2-0 down or like up or maybe even more, that might affect that like type of strategy. But even that but even then you saw that kind of like not that long ago with the LAFC game, they were down 2-0 and they managed to still get the result there. But yeah, I mean, obviously, like I don't think it's a bad tactic to use it, but there could be some certain points where that might affect the Galaxy. And you could even say the same thing with the Portland game, like right after that El Trafico. That was kind of a good example as well. But yeah, though, like I mean, I guess it's not necessarily a bad thing. Maybe there's always going to be pros and cons to every type of tactic you do. But I guess for this instance for the Galaxy, they're just trying to feel the game, feel the rhythm, see what this team does ultimately for their strategies, and then that's when they kind of exploit them, and they have, and like you said, the quality of players, right? The quality of players that we have on this team definitely exploits the weaknesses that some of these teams have. So it's like we have the patience to do that, and we have the I guess the quality and the weapons to really do that too, to really turn it up ultimately later in the game. So it's like yeah, it's very interesting the way the team plays, but it's definitely a recipe of success that we've had so far this season.
Yeah, it's pretty funny how you just mentioned the LAFC game because, like, so far, like, I don't really miss anything about California besides one thing, and that's going to the Galaxy games. And I mean, man, I would have done anything to be at that game. Like, that was fucking insane, even just watching it on my TV on a high volume. I mean, man, like, I didn't get to talk about it all, but that shit was just crazy, honestly. Just want to throw
Yeah,
that out there.
no, you're good, man. But like, yeah, I mean that game was insane. I even said it like the recap of that episode or of that game. I was like, I was at like a cousin's house. Obviously, most of my cousins are LAFC fans, so they were talking their smack in that game, in the first half. But then once the second half happened, boy, were they quiet after that. But but still though, like yeah, that game was pretty crazy. And yeah, like obviously like I mean shit, I'm still in California. I haven't been to a game in a while, and I really miss it too. So hopefully, when the playoffs start, I get to go to at least a couple of those playoff games, hopefully. But still though, yeah, I mean, like in terms of the team though, like yeah, vibes are high at least, with the way everything is, not only just at home but also away, right? We got a result in Colorado, which is pretty big still.
I was still
Um,
saying we're not great on the road at the moment.
well, I guess yeah, recently we haven't, but definitely getting a 3-1 win with
That was
the
good, yeah.
yeah, like definitely for how we've been playing on the road, this definitely was pretty big. So it's like okay, like getting a 3-1 win on the road is pretty big, even though we haven't necessarily been that great on the road recently. So, but still though, it's pretty big on that on that note. But yeah, any other points you want to take from that game, or do you want to kind of talk about the players right now?
I mean, I'll mention our road form just a little bit. Before that Colorado road game, the last road game that we won that wasn't in San Jose was the RSL game that I was at when I did the Gabriel Pet goal celebration. So, I mean, basically we have one road win, not against San Jose in the last like what 3 or 4 months. So like I still think we definitely need to pick it up on the road. I think getting that number one seed in the West is absolutely crucial because I said like after the Portland game too, like at home and on the road, this team is two completely different teams. And I still believe that even though the Colorado game was definitely good, but you definitely want to have that home field advantage going at least to MLS Cup guaranteed.
Yeah, definitely for sure. And that's why, and I think the team knows that too. And with the whole like home field advantage, right? It's like home. We've been doing great at home, which we'll talk about that with the Austin game. But it's like with how we've been playing at home, it's like you want to be at home, And clearly, we've been much better at home, and that's what we need to. That's ultimately the goal. Now, obviously, we've already locked up some home field advantage within the playoffs, but to get the first in the West, to get the number one seed, to ultimately just have it the entirety of the playoffs, like that's a big deal. So it's like it is something that the team needs to get, and they know that we need to get it because it's a big advantage for us. It's a big motivator for the team, considering the fact of how much of a fortress the Galaxy have been at home. So it's like definitely something that's pretty big as well. But in terms of the road games, like obviously we have Houston, which is another road game later on, so we got to get a result there, and then obviously with the whole round 1-3 game play-in series, which is stupid, we're gonna have to at least go to one away, I guess, right? So it's like yeah. So at least we got to close it out with that Houston on the road, pretty good, and to give some motivation for the team for sure. But yeah. But you want to move on into the players? You got any other thoughts about the game?
Yeah, absolutely. A massive 3 points for sure on the road in Colorado, playing a place like Altitude, coming out of there with a win. Definitely very good. That's definitely a very big win to get at this point in the season.
Definitely for sure. Also, no Marco Royce in that game, which was kind of a little bit of a big deal, right? Because he's been kind of playing, he's been helping the team a lot, since he's been here. So no Marco Royce in that game either, which is pretty big. But let's talk about the players who were actually in that game, and let me pull it up real quick because I kind of forgot. All right, I got it. All right, in terms of the starting lineup for Colorado, defense, you had John McCarthy, you had Mickey Yamane, Maya Yoshida, you had Garces in there at center back as well. So Neil was on the bench. You had John Nelson at left back. So let's talk about the defense first. Obviously, you get one goal in that game, but for the most part, I think the defense was, solid that game. So I think for the defense for the most part, we did get to see Garces going in there. I think that was his first start in a while too. So having him being in the starting lineup was a big deal as well. And obviously for the most part, your defense was sort of the same. But how'd you feel about the defense in this Colorado game? And what are your thoughts about it?
Wasn't Garcia's first start versus Vancouver the week before, I believe?
Was it? Oh yeah, I think
It
you're
was,
right.
yeah. It
Yeah.
was.
So this was the second start, but obviously still though we're getting to see more Garces, which is something that we've been kind of we talked about earlier in the season. When are we going to see more Garces? When are we going to see him start? And now we are. So, and I guess you can kind of talk about that now too, since you're back here. But how'd you feel about the defense overall though against Colorado?
Yeah, I remember Garcia started against Vancouver because Neil struggled a lot against LAFC and struggled against Portland, so they pulled him for Garces. And yeah, he's a guy that's been really good, honestly. I've been very impressed with his athleticism, his way to win the ball back, his positioning. It's honestly been really good, and I'm starting to wonder, going into the playoffs, is he going to be our starting center back? Because Neil kind of looks a little bit too flawed for my liking, and yeah, Garces is playing really well right now, so maybe you just ride with him the rest of the way through, which is kind of surprising they made that change this late in the season for me. I thought Neil had the starting spot down the rest of the year, but I mean, that's an interesting topic in itself. But as for the defense, yeah, like you said, very solid overall. I just think it was pretty good overall. Nelson played really good. I mean, talk about a guy that's really stepped up for this team. I mean, Aude has been out of the starting lineup since July, and we're in October now. It's almost like you really haven't really missed him. You haven't really called for him to come back because Nelson has done such a good job consistently, which is really good. And yet again, he played really well. Yoshida had an incredible game, honestly, really shutting down Colorado's attacks. Had some big blocks in the game, too, and winning all his aerial duels. I mentioned Garces was really good. Yamane was definitely really good again, and McCarthy, I guess, made a few saves that he had to make. So overall, across the line, I'd say very solid overall. I think we did a really good job that game.
Yeah, definitely for sure. I think it was a very solid game, and yeah, sure, we got one goal in there, but it was,
A little bit
I guess it is. What's up?
I think the goal was a little bit unlucky too. It was like a left-footed strike that kind of bent in. It was a good strike too, but I don't know if a guy's gonna shoot the ball from that far out, it's I can't really blame the defense that much. That was a tough shot to make.
Yeah, I'll agree with that too. It probably wasn't wasn't that it was probably maybe not lucky for them, but it definitely wasn't something that you would fault the defense too much. But I will say individually though, like you mentioned, John Nelson is a guy who like you said he's been in this lineup for already starting since July. So it's to have him basically been the starter and playing so good, he's doing the right things, he's doing the little things right. And you're right, we haven't necessarily rushed or called out for Aude because how good John Nelson's playing. And yeah, I mean, he's been great, man. He's been great. And honestly, that's what we kind of signed him up for, right? He was going to be that veteran guy. Whenever we needed him, he would step up onto the plate, right? And seemingly now so far this season, he's solidified himself as a starter. Now you get Auda healthy now, which is a big deal too. So maybe you're not going to force Auda in there, and he could be this nice, backup at least for the rest of the season now that he's fully healthy. But yeah, John Nelson's been hanging it up. Gosh, just like you mentioned too, it's like very athletic for a very skinny guy. He is very physical. Could definitely outbody some guys whenever he has to. So like yeah, I mean his athleticism we've been talking about Gosh just like earlier in the season saying like when are we gonna get this guy in? It's like we know what he's capable of. Like when are we gonna get him in? There was the slow build up to get him into the team and to he was playing Ventura County games at one point, and it was just like, all right, like when are we going to see him? Like it's taking too long, and seemingly that I guess you can say the wait has been like has paid off for Garces. Like now he's in there, he's starting now, and he's been playing very good. And even before when he was injured, like when he played the Chivas game, he played very well there. Shutting down Chivas, in that game as well. And yeah, I mean obviously, it is very interesting that we made the move. Obviously Jalen Neal, his form hasn't been that great. I mean you can't deny that his form just hasn't been that great recently, but maybe him being on the bench is the right thing. And again, having Jalen Neal coming off the bench maybe isn't a bad thing either. And then that's when you kind of talk about depth and everything like that. But yeah, I mean Garces has been very, very good in these past few games. And obviously you have the Japanese players. You had Yoshida, Yamana keep doing what they had to do. They were very good that night as well. And yeah, I mean, obviously McCarthy, like you mentioned, made the saves that he needed to do. And, I guess that's kind of been how the defense has, right? Like just the balance that defense has. And sure, there might be some mistakes here and there, but for sure the defense is kind of, maybe this is going to be the defense going into the playoffs and maybe what we need going into the, just going into the playoffs this week. So maybe maybe right now this is what we're going to see later on down the road.
Just super weird though, because at the beginning of the year, Garces went a comical amount of time without playing. Would he not play like the first like 8 games a single minute? It was something like really bad. Then even like throughout the summer, he didn't really play that much. Maybe a few appearances off the bench. Then all of a sudden, Jalen Neal struggling, and then Garces comes in, and it's like, we're kind of asking the question now, like, oh, is this guy going to be our starting center back in the playoffs? Compared to a guy that like, we're saying that for a guy that didn't even play like any of his first like 8 games for the club, which was. Even you and I were talking about a lot was really weird. So I just think that whole situation is interesting how, like, all of a sudden, we're making the change to close out the year. The final, like, 4 or 5 games we made that change, and we didn't really use them before. But now, like, I don't know what changed all of a sudden. It's just kind of weird you'd put that much faith into a guy you didn't really play at all at first. And if he's really going to be the guy, like, I'd also ask you in the same breath after I say that, like, do you think that Neal and Audi will be on the bench come playoff time? Because these were guys that I think a lot of us expected to be starters, but I mean, Audi's been out for like 3 months now, and probably still not fully back to being able to play 90 minutes. And Neal is just totally out of form right now. He's just not playing at his best. So you got to go with your best possible lineup. So yeah, definitely a lot of interesting decisions for sure. It'd be very, very interesting to see what happens.
Yeah, definitely interesting moves for sure. And then like you said, like with the whole Neal and Auda situation, I don't think that's completely a bad thing to have him on the bench. Like I think it's probably the right thing to do, and whatever is willing.
Maybe at this point.
Yeah, at this point, it's maybe not the worst thing to do. And honestly, like like Auda will probably get his chance at the starting position at some point. Maybe not this year, but maybe next year. Well, Jalen Neal, this is his first full season. Right? Because obviously last year he was injured. He was out for a good amount last year. So it's like. This is his first full season, so maybe it's not a terrible thing for his development yet right now, him getting benched. And yeah, like obviously John Nelson has stepped up, Garces has stepped up, and the whole Garces situation is very interesting because, like you mentioned, like there was a good amount of time where he wasn't playing. He played in Ventura County for a few games as well, and it's just like maybe it wasn't the worst decision to have him like, be on the bench, get a feel for MLS, even though it's not necessarily having playing time, but just look at what's going on the field, how the style is played, because obviously, in South America and in MLS, it's a very different style. Maybe some similarities considering the fact that there's a lot of South American players in MLS, but still, though, it's a very different league than what it is in South America when he played in Colombia. So it's like maybe he's just getting the feel of how the league is, and maybe that's not the worst thing because we've seen before with players that they don't have a good adjustment period coming into MLS, and maybe that's what they didn't want with Garcia. So him taking his time, maybe what, like I said, was probably worthwhile the wait. And right now he's playing great. And honestly, the fact that he hasn't had that much playing time maybe could be a big positive, considering the fact that teams aren't going to have a lot of film on Garces. So like maybe it's like, okay, like I don't really know. Yeah, I know this is kind of weird how I said it.
It's funny, but it's true though.
But it is true though. It's like they're not going to have a lot of film on this on him, and considering the fact it's like, whoa, it's like I don't know really how this guy plays. It's a very small sample size compared to some of the other players like John Nelson. Obviously he's playing great, but now he has a good sample size, and people are going to find a way to exploit him. But for Garces, it's like, okay, like we don't really have that much film on him. It's like how are we gonna find a way to to exploit this kid? So it's like it's very interesting to see the whole situation build up. And again, maybe this is going to be the defense going into the playoffs, and it has worked very well for the team. So maybe I guess it is going to be the way we're going to have to go for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's just kind of funny because I kind of thought in my head, like, imagine a bunch of coaches and players in like a film room, and like you're trying to watch film on the other team. Then everybody's just like, "Oh, who is this guy? Holy shit, what do we do?" Like, it would just be kind of funny. Like, they're all looking at each other. Well, we don't really have footage of this guy. Sorry, guys, you got to go figure it out on the field. Like, I don't know, that was just kind of funny for me. But honestly, though, you're right. Like, Garces has looked super good. I think he's been very impressive recently, and yeah, I mean, I'm very impressed. Colombian Youth International player that played in the Libertadores, which is a very hard competition. I'm sure we'll be talking about a competition we qualified for in a little bit, but yeah, definitely very exciting for sure. He looks very good, and hopefully he can keep it up.
Yeah, definitely for sure. But still, though, the film is a real situation. Though it's like I've even heard like some athletes in different sports, they're saying like, oh, like it is much harder to find a guy who you don't have film on than a guy who has a
They
bunch
do
of
have
film.
some in Colombia, no?
I mean, yeah, they're probably going to have to look at the Colombian film and stuff like that. But again, like I mentioned, it's like him going from a different league, transitioning to this one. It's like maybe it is a bit different to see how it looks. And I don't know, maybe they don't have the film for his Colombia stuff. I mean, when we were trying to find film on some of these
Yeah,
players,
that's
like
true.
it's like it's very hard to find. So I don't know if necessarily MLS teams have the film on that, so they got to rely on what they've seen so far in MLS. So, but still though, like it is sort of a real thing. But yeah, I mean, Garcia's right now, just again, he's playing very well. And then you think about the future of this team. It's like, well, think about him next season when he might have a full season and how he's going to play there. So it's like there is a lot to think about also down the road, in terms of not only just this season but also next season and whenever we, then just maybe even more seasons to come, right? I mean, we did sign him to a 5-year deal, right? I believe it was. So it's like, in fact, it was first a loan, then we signed him completely. So the Galaxy seemingly do have faith in him in being the future of this team. So definitely for sure, it's good to see at least a little bit of what we were expecting to see from him when we signed him.
Going from Mavinga to Garces is definitely an upgrade to say the least.
Massive
Since
upgrade.
Masterclass.
Massive upgrade for sure. But anyways, anything else you want to say about the defense before we move on?
Oh, pretty solid overall. I think we got to give the Japanese guys a lot of credit with how consistent they've been all season. I mean, they've just been great, honestly. And like in the past, we'd have problems at center back and right back too, like with Mike Siani, Rolf Felcher. It's like now you get to watch Yoshida and Yamane every week. It's like, man, it is so just night and day compared to players we used to have in the past.
Yeah, I know it's definitely night and day. Like it's crazy. Like it really is crazy to see. But yeah, definitely defense had a solid night that against Colorado, and just in general they've been having a pretty, I guess you could say, solid season as well, especially compared to last year with when we looked at the defense, right? So yeah, good night for the defense. Let's talk about the midfield though. Midfield, you had Cerrillo, you had Delgado, and you had Puig. Like I mentioned before, you did have no Marco Royce in this game. And considering the fact that he had been starting for the past couple games before this one, so no Marco Royce in this one. But yeah, we get Cerrillo back as well because I believe he was also suspended from the last game. So yeah, you get Cerrillo back, you have Delgado, you have Puig. And yeah, obviously you had Puig getting the 2 goals in that one. And yeah, just in general, I guess for the midfield, how'd you feel about it? I mean, I guess to me, I don't think it was too bad of a game either. It was pretty solid from them. Didn't necessarily lose the midfield battle either in that game, but how'd you feel about those guys in the midfield?
Yeah, I'd agree with you. It was definitely solid. I think in the second half it was really good. In the first half, maybe it was a little bit slow, but in the second half we definitely picked it up. I think Surreal looked really good. He was very organized, really kept the midfield structured, which was good. I'm gonna ask you something about Delgado and Royce, like once we're done with this sort of segment right here, because I kind of have an interesting point about it or a question about it, which is I don't know. I've kind of been thinking about it a little bit. It's kind of weird, but yeah, you slot Delgado in there because Royce is injured, and I think he did really well too, really contributing defensively. Obviously, in altitude, that must have been a tough day for him for sure. Mark Delgado, obviously, is a player that, likes to run a lot and does a lot of the defensive work for Ricky Pooch, is not as much of a defender. So, yeah, definitely really helped the team out that day. That was really good. And then Ricky Pooch with a brace, I mean, definitely stepped up for sure. That's been the story all year with our DP players really stepping up. So that was really good from Ricky Pooch as well. And I was, yeah, very happy with it overall. I think our midfield did really well. And Ricky Pooch was a massive difference maker for us, which he has been all season and since he's got here.
Yeah, definitely a massive difference maker so far this season, which I also have like kind of a little question maybe later on, when we get into the Galaxy news part about Ricky Puig and sort of his season. But yeah, I mean, obviously midfield played great. Like you mentioned, Mark Delgado being the engine of that midfield whenever he has the chance. And it's funny, you mentioned the fact that like how tired he was. I think on Twitter or on X, he was like, oxygen, like he posted like oxygen tank now or something like that. Like it was pretty funny because like, yeah, like you definitely need the oxygen tank after the way you played, and especially in high altitude. But yeah, Mark Delgado played very, very good. Cerrillo again, and I think Cerrillo, especially, and I said this in the Portland game. I think Cerrillo, now we've kind of realized how much of a good player he is and how much of an important player he is now in that midfield, and he's been playing very good. This point in the season. So yeah, he played a very good game as well. In terms of how he has been just in general his performance, and yeah, obviously like we talked about Ricky Puig, just the brace and him doing what he needs to do, and it's just I mean, again, not that many turnovers in the midfield. You didn't lose the midfield battle in this game, so I think that's a win in itself. Whenever you look at the midfield, so yeah, definitely a good night overall for them as well. Very solid, and yeah, for Ricky Puig, just again making the highlight of the night for that one, and just the goals and how spectacular he is and the celebrations and everything, right? So yeah, definitely for sure a solid night for the midfield, and yeah, and for Mark Delgado also to step up with Marco Royce being out as well. So like it was a good night. It was a good night for them for sure, and you can't really complain about them too much either.
Yeah, we got Edwin Cerrillo for 300K from FC Dallas. I mean, looking back at that, it's like what a trade that was for us.
Yeah, it definitely was a good trade for us, and Will Kuntz knows what he was doing when he made that trade, right? When he was doing all those trades, and definitely that was one
I liked it the whole time.
Yeah, I mean, definitely for sure. I think everyone liked it, right? Like we said, this is going to be a good one for the team and for the future, and definitely right now as we're talking, like he's been playing very well. So yeah, Cerrillo definitely has been stepping it up, especially with Brugman being out, and then now Brugman, kind of like what's his role now with the Galaxy now. Maybe he's not necessarily the starter anymore, but you're confident now with Cerrillo being in that spot now for the midfield. So definitely for sure, Cerrillo has earned his spot on that team and is definitely playing well for sure for this team. Yeah. Anything else you want to say about the midfield before we move on?
Yeah, I was gonna ask you a question actually.
Oh yeah. Yeah, tell me the question.
Yeah, so like for the last couple of games, like, the previous couple of weeks, we've been starting Marco Royce and Mark Delgado's spot. So it's kind of interesting. Like, I don't know how you want to talk about it. So like attacking wise, obviously it creates a lot of quality for us because you have Jovic, Peck, Painsil, Royce, and Cerrillo behind him. It's like you have a lot of quality overall, but I feel like defensively, if you start Marco Royce, it's like, players can get biased a lot easy because he's not really much of a defender either, and he's kind of edging a lot too, so he's not going to do the running Delgado does. So like what I would just say is like if it comes playoff time, Royce is fully fit. You understand the quality of player that he is, but are you going to bench Delgado for Marco Royce and just say like, well, our offense is going to be so much better and so good and just so wide open, it's going to make up for what we are going to lose defensively if we bench a guy like Mark Delgado? Like that's kind of interesting for me and how that balance would work, but I mean, that's Greg Vanney's decision, right? It's definitely a very tough one to make, but I don't know, it's kind of interesting because there's a lot of pros and cons to both sides of it.
It's definitely an interesting way to a style that I guess that, like you mentioned, Greg Vanney has to think about. And I know we talked about it a little bit before. It's like when you put Marco Royce in there, like offensively, it's like it's very, very difficult for a team to really contain all those guys. And like you mentioned, all the players, right? It's like you got at some point you're gonna have to find a way to defend Jovic, find a way to defend Peck and Painstill, Ricky Puig, and then Marco Royce. So it's
good luck.
It's like good luck with that, right? It's like it's just like it's gonna be very difficult for a team to do that. Now, obviously, like you mentioned, if you started right off the bat, and especially the way with the Galaxy, how I guess slow they build into the game, it could be a little bit of of a negative factor too, because like you mentioned, it exploits us a little bit defensively. Teams are gonna make it easier for them to counterattack whenever we get caught up in a bad position and things like that. You even saw that in the LAFC game, a few weeks ago with them. It's like how they scored as well, and then ultimately, but even then in that game, ultimately the offense just picked it up. And again, like I mentioned, with all those weapons around there, it just makes it so much more difficult to defend. So it's like, yeah, I mean, come playoff time, it's going to be very interesting how they go with Marco Reus, and how his role is going into the playoffs. I guess it also depends on the team as well, who they face. But at that point in the playoffs, it's like, you never know who you're going to face afterwards. You might be out then, or you might go forward. So it's like, it's going to be very interesting to see, how they do it in the playoffs. But again, like Marco Reus and adding him into there just makes it so, it's a big plus for us, because it's like we're going to have so many weapons on the field, and then it's going to be so bad for the teams who have to defend that. So it's like, it's very interesting the way they do it. But obviously, Mark Delgado, if you want to slot him into the starting role as well, that's not a bad idea either. But I guess it just really depends on how they want to play it. But that is a very big and interesting decision that Greg Vanney is going to have to make at some point, heading into the playoffs for sure.
I'd also say too is Brugman probably done being the starter for the year? Like, he was never really the starter in the first place, but we kind of like anticipated for a while, like, oh, once Brugman's fully fit, Cerrillo's probably going to move to the bench, and Brugman's going to be that full-time starter to create the chemistry he had with Ricky Puig before. But like, I feel like at this point, like, I don't know, if one more game to go before the playoffs, like, Brugman's just not fit enough. He hasn't really played enough games all year, and with the way Cerrillo has played the last couple of weeks too, you kind of just have to say like, well, I think Cerrillo's going to be our starter probably going forward, at least for the rest of this year.
Oh yeah, definitely for sure. Like at this point, it's Sergio's job at that point. Like he's basically been the starter the whole year. And again,
Yeah,
like
that's
I
fair.
meant, and I mentioned it before, like whenever we had the whole discussion of like who do you slot in there, it's like, and I always said like, well, no matter which way it went, it was always going to be I guess a plus in a sense. Like Sergio's been playing well, and him being the starter is a plus. And then sure, Brugman maybe hasn't been the starter; he's been injured, but him coming off the bench is also not that bad of an idea either. So it's like, and I think right now, recently, like obviously Brugman has been much better, coming off the bench. So like, yeah, him being a starter, I think it's, at least for the rest of this season, it's, he's not, I don't think he's going to be a starter. It's like, it's Cerrillo going all the way. So it's like, there's really no other, I don't see him going back. And I think you even mentioned it too at one point. It's like, we talk about 2022 and how magical, it was with them in the midfield, how well it went in chemistry wise. But now at this point in 2024, it's just not the same. So it's like, maybe we can't look it back at what happened in 2022. It's like, now we got to look at what helps us now, what helps us, going forward into the playoffs. And yeah, I mean, for Brugman, it's unfortunate. I know he's, a fan favorite. He still is a fan favorite for everybody. It's like, I don't just see him being the starter anymore. It's going to be Cerrillo. And again, him being on the bench is not a bad thing completely. So I think he knows the role. He's a veteran player as well. I think he understands it. And, for his age and things like that, like that's going to be the role it is. So it's like, and whatever's going to help the team, it's going to help the team. So I think he understands that as well. So, yeah, definitely for sure. It's Cerrillo all the way. Yeah. But anyways, anything else you want to say about the midfield before we move on into the offense?
Yeah, obviously Ricky Puig scoring a brace, definitely really good for us for sure. Definitely like to see that.
Definitely for sure. You always want to see Ricky Puig, perform what we, and especially with the DP spot, how much we're paying him. It's like seeing him do that is very much well worth it, right? So Ricky Puig doing Ricky Puig things is, it's always spectacular to see, right? But let's go into the offense. Starting, your front three, you had Peck, you had Painstill, you also had Joveljic in there. Starting in this game. So obviously offense, you had Gabriel Peck getting a goal to start us off for us. Gabriel Peck, just in general, the season has been amazing. I know how much you've talked about Gabriel Peck this whole time, so it's like he's been amazing. He gets a goal on that one. Joveljic and Painstill maybe don't get a goal. I think Painstill also had a few chances in that game as well. Couldn't convert, but still though, at least Peck has been the bright spot, of that night in the offense. So how'd you feel about the offense that night and what they had to offer?
Yeah, they had some moments for sure. Definitely had some moments. I'll give Pencil a little more credit. That Colorado game, maybe offensively, it wasn't all there for him, but I will say I did see him contributing a lot defensively compared to what he normally does. So I think he kind of made a bit of a sacrifice for the team, which I can totally respect. So I'll give him that at least. Jovic too, not really that effective on the net, but did have a really strong header for, I believe, what was the second goal. So that was really good. That was a really good moment he had. And then yeah, Gabriel Peck tying up the game, making a run in behind, definitely really good for sure. So I would say the offense, didn't really display that much on the night, but they did have some good individual moments that helped the team out a lot.
I would agree with that as well. It's like, they had their moments in that game, and maybe they didn't necessarily like, take over that game, but they had their moments that helped the team, and ultimately, like maybe that's what you need from those guys. And like you mentioned, Payne still playing a little bit more defensively. Jovic, I think, also understands that hey, maybe he's not always scoring, but he always finds ways to contribute into the offense, into the team that ultimately helps them. So I think Jovic also knows what to do in those situations, and of course Gabriel Peck, like I mentioned, to tie that game. The way he's been playing, just in general this season, has been incredible. He still does what he's doing in the season. So it's very good to see as well. But yeah, offense, I think maybe not necessarily an amazing night, but it was still a good night for them as well in terms of what they had to offer in that game as well.
Yeah, and I'll talk about Joseph Pinto a little bit when we get to the Austin game, but I do have like something to say about him.
Yeah, definitely for sure. I got especially in that Austin game, definitely for sure there was some things to say about him. But anything else about the offense you want to talk about, or you want to move on?
Yeah, we had some good individual moments, and it was really good they stepped up when they needed to.
Yep, definitely for sure they did. Management subs, anything that kind of stood out to you in that aspect either in that game?
Honestly, pretty good. I would say, like, since the League's Cup break, I think Greg Vanney has actually done a really good job managing our team, managing results. I got to give him credit there, which, a lot of people are talking about a possible extension coming up. Well, he's helping himself out right now. I can definitely say that. He's doing a lot of things well at the moment.
Yeah, definitely for sure. Also, he's been in the I was going to talk about some of the I guess the season awards that he's been nominated for Coach of the Year, which we'll talk about a little bit in the Galaxy News portion. But definitely for sure, he's been managing the games well, and obviously this is what we wanted from Greg Vanney, right? Like that with the type of coach he is. So definitely for sure, he's been doing well for in terms of managing the game and things like that. So definitely good for him as well. But yeah, though, any other points or any other things you want to take from this game before we move on?
Just a massive win overall. I've already said it, but it still remains true. Like, it was huge to go in there in the middle of the week in altitude to get 3 points. Try to continue to clinch that first spot in the West. Definitely helped a lot.
Definitely helped out. Definitely helped out a lot for sure. And obviously, yeah, when we're gonna get we need to get all the points we can if we're gonna clinch that number one spot. And definitely getting 3 points on the road, not an easy thing to do. But the fact that we did it and against a team like Colorado, definitely for sure was a massive result for them. And so definitely good for them and going into going into the Austin game, which I guess now we can talk about the Austin game as well. So yeah, let's move on into that one. So obviously Austin at home. Final home game of the regular season. We knew going into that game we needed to win that game. Obviously, Austin going into that game needed to win that game, considering that they were in the spot where they can miss out the playoffs if they don't win and things like that, right? Like, so they were fighting for playoff spots there, or at least for the play-in. But so for them going into that game, they're going to want to win that game. So it was going to be a challenging game, and you saw it in that game. It was 2-1. It got chirpy at times. In terms of that game, because both teams had something to play for. Austin we get a goal first in the first half. Austin ties it. Driussi gets a goal. Then ultimately Jovic kind of seals it for us when that 2-1, for us to get the 3 points at home and to be undefeated at Dignity Health Sports Park for the season, which is a massive, impressive accomplishment for the team. But definitely for sure, it was a chirpy game. It was a back and forth game, you can kind of say, for both teams, but we ultimately got the 3 points, and that helped us a lot for the team and ultimately for what we've been doing this season at home. But yeah, how'd you feel about the game against Austin at home? What were your thoughts about it? And yeah, just break it down for me, man.
Yeah, absolutely. You said it. We definitely needed to win that game at home against a team like Austin that was going to be eliminated from playoff contention. I think the only way they would have made it is if they made up like a 15 goal difference in 2 games. So like they probably weren't going to win 8-0 2 straight games. That just wasn't going to happen. So yeah, obviously we needed to win that game for sure. Go undefeated at home the entire season, which I mean is absolutely incredible. I believe that's the first time in club history we've done that. And we've had some really good seasons at home in the past, especially like when we were winning MLS Cup. So it's huge. It's absolutely massive. Definitely great to not lose a single home game all season at Dignity Health Sports Park. And yeah, we had some good moments for sure. Gabriel Peck, again, just a guy that's just been doing everything for us, really. A goal contribution just about every single game, just absolutely, making wonders for us, stepping up at every given moment, giving us 3 points, giving us wins. He's been absolutely incredible. Austin stays in the game. Yeah, they did a good job. You got to give him some credit there. But then ultimately in the second half, again, we score another really tough goal, just a beautiful goal from Joveljic. We find him inside the box, and as flawed as Joveljic can be as a player sometimes, one thing I got to give him is when he's in and around the 18-yard box, the guy can pick out a shot and he can flat out score. I mean, he's really good at that, finding where the ball needs to go. So yeah, overall, we had players that stepped up, and that was really good. You saw it from Peck, you saw it from Joveljic. I think Ricky Pooch played really well as well. So yeah, very happy on the night. We go undefeated at home, and now it's in our hands on decision day, or possibly even before that. Maybe we can get the #1 seed, and that would be absolutely just, I mean, massive for us. Like last year, we finished 13th in the Western Conference, and now it's like, we could be on the verge of finishing first. It's like the turnaround is a complete 180, and it's exciting. Honestly, it's very exciting.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, compared to where we were last year, compared to now, it's a complete difference. It's night and day, right? And yeah, obviously, getting a win this past Saturday at home was a massive deal. Like you mentioned, undefeated, and I think the first time we've done that undefeated at Dignity Hill Sports Park. So it's like, it's just massive. It really is. It's like it's really big it's a really big deal for the team. It's a really big deal for the fans and everybody who supports the Galaxy. And yeah, I mean, like I said, even though it was a chirpy game and it was a game where it was kind of close, we still managed to get the 3 points, which is still pretty massive for them. And, still, though, it's just great to see. You got to see your players step up in that game. You got to see Peck, again, score a goal, Joveljic score a goal, who's also, when you talk about 180s, you talk about a guy like him, right? Like who only had very few goals last season and now being one of the top scorers for the team. It's just like, it's so crazy to think about that as well. And so, yeah, I mean, obviously it was a good result. It's a result that we needed. And like you mentioned, like getting a win here does give us a little bit more leeway going into the next game on decision day. And like you mentioned, we can either, it can even come sooner, clinching the #1 seat, the spot, obviously depending on the whole LAFC game. But still though, like obviously I think for the team, it's like no matter what, we got to go win the next game against Houston because that ultimately could decide our fate. So still though, getting a win at home against Austin, massive for the team. And honestly, like just ultimately just like when you look at how the season is and how the team has played so far and, going into next season as well, just, with what we're going to play, next year, it's just like, it's just so crazy, man. And honestly, like, I think everybody who was either in the stadium or even at home or even you who was in Ohio was just like, man, like, it's just so crazy to see everything going the way it is right now. And like we mentioned, I don't think anybody really expected this season to go the way it is right now. And it's just been awesome, man. And honestly, that Austin game just sort of kind of like, kind of just gave everybody like this, like just the good vibes, going in. So definitely for sure, it was a massive result, and getting the 3 points at home to make it an undefeated season at home is just incredible, man.
The goals we scored were so nice too, like Peck turning Beater around, who I'm sure we're going to talk about, and getting the ball on his left foot, placing it bottom corner, and that Joveljic strike too. I mean, both of our goals were just an absolute beauty. Really, it was nice to watch.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, and you mentioned Joveljic, I think, on your story. It's just like, and I even said it like a couple of weeks ago too. It's like, I think he might be back, bro. Like the way he's been scoring, the way he's been playing as well.
Joveljic.
Yeah, man. Like it would, like honestly, it's vintage Joveljic in a say, which is kind of weird because it's not like it's that long ago, but it's very much like like Joveljic is starting to get his groove again, and it's just like that's what we want to see as well, and what we expected him to see, going into the season. So definitely for sure, him playing the way he's been playing has been incredible, and of course Gabriel Peck playing the way he's been playing has just been. It's been amazing, man. It's been amazing to see all these players do what they've been wanting to do. But yeah, though, obviously, yeah, massive win against Austin. And honestly, you can't really say much more than it's just like, yeah, you needed the 3 points. And honestly, it just goes a long way for the team and their motivation as well, too. But yeah, I don't know. Any other points you want to take about that game or anything that kind of stood out to you in that game, though?
For sure, going undefeated at home is just a really good accomplishment, honestly, and that's something you really like to see.
Yeah, definitely for sure. And again, it's the first time we've seen this for the Galaxy. They've never done this before, and the fact that, like you mentioned, like the MLS Cup winning teams that we've seen before, it's like the fact that nobody else has done it is kind of it's crazy. It's history in the making. It really is, and we've seen more history making moments in this season throughout the whole season. So it's like for the Galaxy to do things like that as well. It's it's a historic Galaxy team. Like I think you can kind of say like this is a very historic Galaxy team with the way they've been playing, and obviously it'll all cap off with if they go win the MLS Cup. But obviously, take it one game at a time. But still, though, it's like if you go out and get some hardware with the way this team has been playing, it's like it'll even be much more of a historical team by the end of it. But again, it's just like obviously we got to take it one game at a time. But still, though, as of right now, it's still very much a historical Galaxy team and a team that I think a lot of people are going to remember down the road. And I don't know if you necessarily feel the same way about that.
I mean, yeah, speaking of historical Galaxy teams, we didn't lose a back-to-back game a single time this season, and there's two other Galaxy teams that didn't do that in 2011 and 2014, and we all know how those seasons ended, so you want to talk about history being in favor of us right now, it's like, that's a really good sign for sure. We got to see how we perform in the playoffs, but I think going into it, there's definitely a lot of room for optimism.
Definitely a lot of optimism going into the playoffs. A lot of hopes, a lot of highs going into this. And again, it's like you look at historically, just like the way this team has been playing. It's just like it's crazy. It really is crazy. And again, like I mean, down the road, I think people will remember this team. But again, I think what makes it people will definitely remember this team if you get some silverware off of it, right? Like if you go win it all, it's like people are definitely going to remember this team forever. But it's like, but still though, like what they're doing is nothing more but remarkable. It's like it's just we've been very good to see them play the way they've been playing. So yeah, definitely for sure, just crazy. And I totally forgot about the whole back to back losses. Like that's another crazy thing too. It's like we haven't lost back to back games this season. Like that's so crazy. Like and even Maya Yoshida said during the season, like good teams don't lose back to back, and seemingly they haven't this season. They're definitely a good team. They're definitely a team that's going to try to go make a run and make a push. And it's just like, yeah, man, it's just like, it's crazy to see. And compared to what it was last season to now, it's incredible. And definitely for sure, a lot of the team definitely has high hopes, and they're going to have a lot of momentum trying to go into the playoffs as well.
I mean, forget just what it was compared to last season, what it was compared to the last 8 years, you could really say, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, definitely for sure. Like, I mean, I don't even think there was anything close.
Not close, no, not even
No, like
close.
to what Chris Klein was in charge, right? It's like not even when Zlatan was here, we had like a really good team like this. It's like it's so crazy. It's like to see what that would, to see how this team has just been performing and the
Two
direction of
windows,
the
too.
team. Yeah, exactly. Two windows to it. It's just like, yeah, it's just so crazy, man, to see how they've been performing and the way they've been doing and the direction the team is going for sure. But yeah, man, it's crazy. It's a a team that a lot of people are going to remember for sure. But anything else you want to talk about the game or before we move on into the players?
Oh, I think that's pretty much it. We can move on.
All right, let's talk about the players then. So, defense, I believe it was the same as like in Colorado. So you had John McCarthy in there, you had Mickey Imane, Maya Yoshida, you had Garces, and you had John Nelson in that game. How'd you feel about the defense in this game? I think I think they played a good night in this one as well, or they had a good night, at home. But how'd you feel about the defense in that game against Austin?
Yeah, more of the same, honestly. I think it was another very good night. I think John Nelson was very solid yet again. The two Japanese players are really solid. McCarthy made a couple saves he needed to make. And Garces, again, really impressive. I'm very happy with what I'm seeing at the moment. And yeah, another really good performance for sure. I think the goal was a little bit sloppy to concede early in the second half. It was, I don't know, I feel like some players sort of switched off. But yeah, other than that one moment, which I don't even think it was entirely on the defense, I think our midfield didn't really mark too well. So yeah, pretty solid overall. Definitely happy with how they played.
Yeah, definitely for sure. It was a good night for them, I think, in my opinion as well. Even though the goal, yeah, like I mean, Austin was going to try to find a way to score because they needed to be, they needed to keep themselves in the game. So I don't think you could really like put too much fault on the defense either. It's like I think it was just kind of something that was kind of bound to happen, I guess you can say, considering what the implications were. But for sure, the defense definitely, and like kind of how we mentioned in Colorado, the way they played there, it's just like it was sort of kind of the same thing here. It's like, yeah, there were some moments, but really for the most part in the night, they played a very good game. And I think, yeah, we already talked about a lot of the guys in the Colorado game, and the same thing for this game. It's just like, you can kind of say the same thing. So it was a good night for them overall. And I think collectively they had a good night as well. Yeah. Anything else you want to say about the defense before we move on to the midfield? No? All right, let's talk about the midfield then. Midfield was actually different in this game. And we talked about, before saying like, oh, we can't think about 2022 midfield and sort of that idea. Well, we had that 2022 midfield. You had Delgado in there. You had Brookman. You had a Puig in the midfield in there. How'd you feel about the whole midfield and how they played? What were your thoughts on that?
Yeah, was Surreal on the bench or was he suspended?
No, he was on the bench because he did come in the game.
Oh, he was?
Yeah.
I don't remember that, did he? I'm pretty sure he might have, yeah.
No, he was on the bench. He came on in the game later. I remember.
Oh, yeah, he did. He did come on later in the second half. I didn't recall that. All right, so they gave Brugman a start. All right, fair enough. Then, I mean, Surreal just played altitude, a couple days ago, so it's probably smart to rotate. But yeah, overall, I think the midfield did pretty good. I think Brugman looked all right in, his first start in a while. I think that was pretty good to give him a start. Delgado, yeah, pretty impressive again. I think he did a lot of things really well. I think he made it difficult for Austin to get the ball forward and really made it difficult for them to try to penetrate us. And Ricky Puig played really well again too. I think he made a lot of really good passes and really, got players in good position. So I'd say the midfield, kind of similar to Colorado, honestly had a pretty good game overall.
Yeah, I would say so as well. It's just the difference was you did have Brugman in there. I think, like kind of how we mentioned before is like now when we saw Brugman starting, it was kind of like, all right, why are we seeing him start? But like you kind of mentioned, Surreal and altitude kind of give him a little bit of a break here. And then, yeah, he played good. He had a good game. Now, obviously, I don't think he's going to, keep starting, but definitely for this one start that he had, he played very well, for what we needed him to do. And Mark Delgado, again, just keep doing his thing, being that engine. And then for Ricky Puig, again, maybe didn't get on the score sheet on the night, but definitely when you look at the movements he made, the passes that he made, what he created definitely helped the Galaxy a lot in this game, especially in those two goals. I mean, you look at the pass he gave to Peck was amazing, and just yeah, I mean, obviously Ricky Puig just doing his thing, even if he's not
to assist.
On and 2 assists, yeah. So maybe he was on the score sheet, but definitely got himself on the assist sheet, I guess you could say, that night. But for sure, he definitely played a very good game as well, and him doing his thing is awesome. But yeah, I mean, similar to Colorado, they had a good night, even though it was, the one difference was Brugman starting. Yeah. Anything else about the midfield you want to say before we move on into the offense?
Yeah, like you said it yourself, I totally agree with you. Ricky Puig didn't score on the night, but I think he was very influential in the game, really getting on the ball, and you saw that with the 2 assists he got, making a difference.
Yeah, definitely for sure. Made a massive difference. Or maybe not massive, but he definitely made the difference and was, we wanted him to be the difference maker, right? So, like, obviously him being the difference maker in that game as well is a massive for us. But anyways, let's talk about the offense. Offense, you had same thing, just like in Colorado. You had Peck, you had Painstill, you had Joveljic. How'd you feel about the offense? Of course, Peck gets his goal, which was another great goal. Joveljic gets one on the night, and Painstill seemingly had some chances to get one there, but didn't. But how'd you feel about the offense that night for the Galaxy?
Yeah, obviously Peck was really good all night. Got the goal, which was really good. I think he was involved in the match too, which you really like to see. Joveljic had some good moments too, had some good hold-up play, which is one thing I would say about him this year. I think his hold-up play has got a lot better compared to what it was in years past, which I think has helped him a lot to get in better position, which is good. Then you obviously saw the second goal, which was a great strike. I mean, Ricky Puig plays it to Joveljic inside the box. He shifts the ball onto his weaker left foot and then completely roofs the shot. I mean, it's a great shot to give us the win. And yeah, he's the difference maker too. Another difference maker for Joveljic. So, I mean, definitely very good for sure. And yeah, Painstill, honestly, I just gotta say, obviously the Galaxy are playing super well right now, but the only negative through the last couple of weeks for me is Joseph Painstill. I mean, I think it's fair. We have to challenge this guy. Joseph Painstill, where are you right now? I can't seem to find you, because you look over the last couple of weeks, Ricky Puig has made a massive difference. Brace in Colorado, 2 assists versus Austin. Obviously, played well in El Trafico, played well versus Vancouver. Peck, he's been electric basically for months now, scoring every single game basically, having assists. Joveljic, scored a brace in El Trafico, scored the game winner versus Austin. Royce has looked really good when he's come on. So it's I'm looking at this team, and then I look at Joseph Painstill, and it's what are you giving me right now exactly? Again, he had a chance versus Austin to put the ball in the back of the net. Peck dribbles 2 guys, plays a perfect pass to him. He skies it. I think it hits the crossbar and goes out. It's just moments like that where it's you have to put the ball in the back of the net. And you're our highest paid player too. Our highest paid player making $3.5 million a year. I just have to challenge Painstill and say, dude, you have to be better. I mean, this Galaxy team has so much quality with Peck, Pooch, Royce, Joveljic. Like, we can drag Paintsville to wins at the moment and still get a lot of wins and still be in great form, but I mean, this guy just has to step it up for me. He's just not giving me enough and hasn't for a while now. And him at left wing again, like, I don't think it's working very well, but I don't know what you have to say about it, but I just say for Pencil, like, I mean, you need to pick it up, dude. Honestly, you really do need to pick it up. And that's the only negative thing I got right now. Through his, you have nothing but positivity for this team.
I mean, I will say about Paint still. Like, I guess you could say he is the more of the, like you said, maybe the negative thing. But even when you look at, I guess the stats, I guess this season as a whole, like you could say, well, if that's negative, like that's pretty good. But still, though, like I understand what,
Sure.
yeah, but I understand what you're saying about Paint still, though, in terms of the fact that, and I've said it before, it's like now it's the more of the consistency factor for Paint still because we can see him get the production. He had back to back goals in games not too long or before this, or was it before the Colorado one? Yeah, before Colorado, he had back to back games where he scored a goal, even though maybe they weren't necessarily like wonder goals or anything like that. He still got on the score sheet. But at the end of the day, it's just like, for Paints, though, it's like, yeah, there's going to be moments where we're going to need you. Like, I mean, and especially now going into the playoffs where it's like, yes, we've seen Peck have his moments. We've seen Puj get his moments. We've seen Rick, sorry, my bad. Dejan Joveljic get his, his moments. Marco Royce had one moment, but we'll have to see what he has to offer. He still offers a lot too, but for Paint, so it's like, all right, you've been here for a while. We've seen you have the production, but we need you to be important in those moments where we need you to. Because there was a moment where Paint still could have locked this game like a while ago, like in the beginning of the game, right? Like he had that one opportunity. He had a couple, I think another one in the second half as well. It's just like, it's like there was moments where Paint still could have locked it in for the win. Like obviously it's still great that we got the win, but there's just those important moments where we need to see Joseph Paint still be clinical and be that guy in those moments. And again, I don't want to knock on his season completely or anything like that, but I understand where you're coming from. And the fact is, we need to see you in those big moments as well. Like we need to see you be important in those moments. And again, like sure you're still getting production, but when it really matters the most, where we really need to see you get the production, it's like you haven't necessarily shown it. So I think that's been the more of the question for Joseph Paint still going into, at least at this point into the season, if that makes sense, about Joseph Paint still.
Yeah, that absolutely makes sense. And that's the point I was trying to make is like when I listed those guys before and some of the big goals they scored. I mean, for us, where's Joseph Painsel's big goal recently? Like I was talking about before, Joveljic with the brace and El Trafico. Puig has been incredible. Peck has been incredible. These guys have scored absolutely massive goals for us in massive games to get us 3 points in a game where if they didn't have these massive moments, maybe we're walking away with 1 or 0. I'm just saying for Joseph Pansel, like where is that moment for him? We saw it early in the season, but we're just not seeing it anymore. And like, yeah, we still have production. Like he has about like almost 20 goal contributions this year, back to back goals a few games ago. And I think the Portland game we lost, the Vancouver game we won, but he still scored in both of those games. But yeah, I just feel like we need to see more high level moments and him being our highest paid player. It's like, we should expect that, honestly. Like that should be the expectation for him. He should be a Peck, a Pooch. Instead, he's kind of like a Joveljic class right now or Delgado, which isn't a bad thing, but like as a TV player, it's like we need to see a little bit more from you, especially if we want to win, MLS Cup or trophies in the future. It's like we need all three of our DPs to be just next level. And right now, Pencil has not been next level, and he hasn't been for quite a long time, in my opinion.
Right, I get what yeah, definitely for sure. It's like and like you mentioned, like when was the last like massive goal that he had, and really,
It was Portland in July, and that was 3 months ago.
Yeah, I was gonna mention that. It's like you look at that Portland game, it's like yeah, that was a big game for him, and honestly, it's like since then we haven't really seen much from that either, and it's just like. And again, like, and you kind of did answer, but I was going to ask, like, is that a concern, like, going into the playoffs now with Joseph Painstill? Because obviously obviously we have a lot of weapons and things like that with how everybody's been playing, but in the playoffs, you're going to need there might be a moment where you need, or there might be a point in the game where you need a moment, where you need a point where a player needs to step up in the most crucial moment, in the game, and that might be Painstill at some point. Like, but obviously we haven't even seen him do that in the regular season, or at least recently. So it's just like could that be a concern going into the playoffs? Like, I mean, again, we don't knock on his production wise, but still though, it's the moments that are going to matter in the playoffs. Like at that point, production doesn't matter. It's like we need you to have those moments that ultimately win us the game. Like, do you think that could be kind of a little bit of a concern going into the playoffs?
I mean, me personally, I said this before. I think Diego Fagundes deserves to start over Joseph Pansel. He's been better for almost like 5 months now, and I think having Fagundes on the field and letting Peck play an even bigger role is like that's a really great balance to have, and that would help out the team a lot on the field. But the reality is, Joseph Pansel's going to start because that's a player we paid $9 million for, and he's a DP player. And yes, he still has had production this year, so you're not going to bench him completely. So, I mean, I would say like yes, his form is definitely concerning. He needs to pick it up, but. I mean, when you have guys like Joveljic, Peck, and Pooch that could also produce moments, it's like, well, yeah, Plain we need you to step up. But at the very least, like, let's say you're not scoring those big moments, at least do what you did in Colorado and help us on the defensive end. If you're not going to score those big goals and have other guys do it, which we have other players that are capable of doing it, you got to provide other aspects to the game, too. So I would say if you can find the right role for him come playoff time, I think we'll be fine. But you definitely want to see him get on the score sheet at least a little bit more in bigger moments, definitely.
Definitely for sure, and hopefully maybe he gets that in Houston. Maybe he gets a good goal there, but definitely for sure. I mean, Paintsville that night maybe wasn't the best of his nights. Again, he had a few opportunities in that game to really kind of seal the game as well, um, but still though, like we got to see a little bit better from him in terms of those moments, in terms of that aspects of the game. But overall though, still though, the offense still had a good night. Dejan still had a goal. Peck still got a goal in that one, so you still gotta, what's it called? Credit the offense in that sort of aspect as well. But anyways, anything else you want to say about the offense before we move on?
I mean, yeah, I've said it already, but Gabriel Peck has just been on an absolute heater, man. I mean, he's going crazy right now, really just taking over games for us, which is beautiful to see. I mean, he's been very helpful to our team all year, and I'm very happy to have him here.
Yeah, definitely for sure. He's been phenomenal, and honestly, just again, the way I mean, he's worth every single penny at this point. Like and even if that man said, "Hey, give me another extension or give me more money," you pay the man. Like that man has at this point has earned everything he can. So yeah, definitely for sure, Gabriel Peck has been phenomenal. But yeah, still though, great night for him as well. Management and subs, anything that kind of stood out to you there?
One thing I'll add about Gabriel Peck that I found kind of funny. So like I've kind of noticed like throughout the season a little bit, like sometimes Joseph Pansel would miss a really big chance, and then Gabriel Peck would be like, "Well, guess what? I'll just do it myself and I'll score." Like we saw that a couple of games too. Like remember in Salt Lake when Joseph Pansel had a one-on-one with the keeper, hits it right at him, and then Gabriel Peck scores the game winner, and then in Austin, Joseph Pansel has like almost an open net, hits the crossbar, Gabriel Peck scores the opening goal. It's almost like Gabriel Peck is like that big parent when Joseph Pansel messes up and be like, don't worry, I'll do it for you, and then just completely takes over the game and scores. It's pretty funny actually, but there's also some truth to it. It's been very good to watch.
Yeah, definitely for sure. It's very good to watch to see how he's played, and yeah, there is those moments too where you can kind of look at it that way. But yeah, definitely for sure. Gabriel Peck has stepped up in those moments as well, and again, we talked about it earlier this season. Is we needed him to see them step up in those moments, and he's done it already for so many times now this season. So he's been great. Yeah, but Gabriel Peck's just amazing. But yeah, anything else you want to take from the game, or anything that kind of stood out to you for the game?
I mean, if Gabriel Peck was in his form right now towards the beginning of the season when he didn't come from a different country, didn't have a wedding, like I think it's probably fair to say he'd have almost 40 goal contributions right now. He's on 32 right now, and that was like a first 2 months where Gabriel Peck was trying to get integrated into the team. So that's kind of crazy. We have a DP winger almost with like realistically, like if he was here from the start, almost 40 goal contributions, it's like, man, I mean, that truly is like absolutely incredible. Combined with the way Ricky Puch has played, it's like this duo is like just absolutely top class in MLS.
Yeah, I know. It's so crazy, man. And again, it's just like, and it's the same thing when we got Ricky for the first time. It's just like, it was just go to the idea of like, all right, if we can just build around this one guy, it's like, just imagine how this team could be. And seemingly that's just how it's been this season. Like we've gotten him the right pieces for Ricky Puig to really just ball out, and obviously Peck balls out too. Yeah, and Joveljic as well. Just like him playing the way he's been playing, and even though Paint still has the production as well, it's just like the amount of weapons that we've got now to support Ricky Puig is just like, it's just crazy, and it helps everybody. It helps everybody in that sort of aspect in terms of the team, and also just getting wins as well. So yeah, it's been crazy, but yeah, I mean honestly, it's very interesting. Which by the way, we'll talk about sort of like the end of season awards as well, going into the Galaxy News part, which, a lot of our guys are nominated at least for some of those awards. But yeah, still though, great night for those guys for sure. Yeah. But anyways, anything you want to say before we move on?
Yeah, going undefeated at home is definitely great. It was a very good win. Peck stepped up, Joveljic stepped up to get the 3 points we needed. Time to go into decision day now.
Yes, sir. Time to go into decision day, which is not an easy one against Houston at Houston. Obviously, decision day still going to be a tough one, so we'll see how that goes as well. But anyways, that was Austin, of course. That was the recap for that one, and also Colorado as well. So those were our recaps, and let's move on. We got a little bit of Galaxy news, a little bit of some injury updates. We talked about Marco Royce earlier. He will actually be available for the Houston game, which was, we were also wondering is like, when was he going to come back? Maybe we wait till the playoffs start. Maybe he gets an opportunity at Houston. Now that's been confirmed that he is going to be available for Houston. So that is going to be a big step up in terms of him coming back. And when we talk about weapons, like that guy's going to be a weapon as well when he's on the field. So yeah, definitely good to see that he's available now. That is a little bit of injury updates. And then obviously, let's talk about other Galaxy news. Let's talk about actually something for next year, which is going to be massive for this team. The Galaxy have now qualified for the 2025 CONCACAF Champions Cup. We haven't been in this tournament in 10 years as well, since 2015. It's been a while. The Galaxy are now back in in the region's biggest stage in this tournament. A lot of really good teams going to be participating in this tournament, so it's a massive deal for the team. And yeah, I mean, obviously, I want to take want to know your thoughts about it. Obviously, we talk about how historic this season has been, and now we're rewarded with getting an opportunity to play in one of the region's biggest tournaments. So, how do you feel about the whole CONCACAF Champions League or Champions Cup qualifications, and how do you feel about that?
Yeah, it's an absolute honor, honestly. We haven't played there, like you said, in 10 years since we last won MLS Cup. And to get back there, I think is massive for the club. I mean, the Galaxy are one of the biggest clubs, if not the biggest club in MLS. So you definitely want to put yourself in those competitions, really show out there, represent our club well. And yeah, definitely very excited for sure. It's a huge opportunity. Very excited we got it. And yeah, just super happy overall. There's not really too much to add. I hope we do really well in the competition. We put out our best possible 11, and it's exciting, honestly. It's really cool to be back there.
Yeah, it is very exciting because again, it's not a massive opportunity to go showcase to the rest of the region that how good this team is, and the fact that they have an opportunity to go showcase that's awesome. And obviously, when you think about the bigger picture of if you win it, you qualify for Clubs World Cup, which is now even more of a big deal because of how it is now. Especially going into next year with their whole tournament format. But still, though, it's like winning it and then again. Getting an international trophy is a big deal as well. But yeah, being back there is just amazing. And like I mentioned, like there's a lot of really good teams that are going to be in this tournament. Like obviously when you look at MLS and Liga MX and a lot of the South Central American teams. But point is, it's just like you're going to see a lot of big clubs going in that tournament. So I think it's going to be a very good showcase to see what this team could do and how they can play against top competition in the region. But yeah. So that's a really big deal in terms of for next year. So obviously, and that's going to be a different team as well. Maybe some of the additions that we make in the off season, it's going to even make that that competition a lot more fun and exciting to see as well. But yeah, 2025 CONCACAF Champions Cup. If you got plans next year on Tuesdays and Wednesday nights, forget about them. You're going to be watching the Galaxy, playing that tournament. But yeah, so that's good for them. Let's talk about actually, and I mentioned it before, end of the year awards, because those nominees actually came out, earlier today. So in terms of players getting nominated for awards, you look at MLS MVP, Ricky Puig has been nominated. Newcomer of the Year, Gabriel Peck has been nominated. Defender of the Year, Maya Yoshida has been nominated. The Drive Progress Impact Award, which I believe is a community award for MLS, Jalen Neal has been nominated. And for Coach of the Year, of course, Greg Vanney has been nominated. So you got a lot of guys who are nominated for these awards. Obviously, you're going to have to look at a lot of different players and teams around the league on who might win these awards. But I mean, obviously, it's a big honor and a big, it's a good thing for have these players represent in these types of awards. Going into the end of the season. But like, how do you feel about these players and staff being nominated? for these awards? And maybe do you even have? Can you make a case on any of these guys could make a could possibly win some of these awards?
Yeah, definitely very good for them for sure. But like as for myself, I gotta be honest, I don't really care. I want to win MLS Cup and that's it. Like if these guys get individual awards, that's cool. They can have their moment, but we have a team goal we're trying to get to, and that's where my focus is at right now.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I agree with that as well. Um, but still, though, it is a good thing to see these guys get nominated for these awards. And honestly, I don't know if I mean, when you look at a lot of the, I guess like the Inter Miami people, like it's just like a lot of those guys are nominated, and honestly, there's like going to be a lot of there's a lot of good players, a lot of good coaches out there who deserve to be in that conversation for these awards. But it's good to see that our players and our coaches in these listed for potentially winning these awards. But I would agree that yes, like at the end of the day, we want the team award, we want the MLS Cup. But if these guys end up getting an individual award, you can't be too mad about that either. And again, you can make some cases for the guys that they could get that award. So hopefully that is the case, but we'll see later on when those awards get announced. But yeah, that's a little bit more of Galaxy news. And I think that's it for Galaxy news in terms of the first team. I guess we can talk a little bit about Ventura County. I know they had a game yesterday. They ended up losing in penalties 4-2. And I believe that was their last game of the regular season, if I'm correct, right? So they ended up losing that game as well, and I think they're in sixth place in terms of the standings. So I don't know if you end up managing to see the Ventura County game. Obviously, okay, you didn't, but still though, obviously Ventura County didn't win that game. But I don't know. I don't know. Just in general, I don't even know if they're in the playoffs. Right? Are they in? I think they would be qualified at third, sixth, right?
They didn't qualify for a playoff spot. It's funny enough, they're the only team to qualify for the playoffs with a losing record, but part of that is they have so many draws. So like the points just kind of stacked up at the end. But yeah, they qualified for the playoffs. They're definitely going into the playoffs on very bad form. They've lost a lot of games, obviously lost a lot of players too. So I wouldn't be surprised if they had a first round exit because most of their team that got them to that position is not even there anymore. But yeah, I mean, it's good they're in the playoffs in the first place, right? Like, I mean, last year, like, they were really bad. They were getting destroyed every game. Now they're a playoff team at least, while still losing a lot of players. So, like, it's definitely a step forward for sure, regardless of what happens.
Definitely for sure, and hopefully those guys, once comes playoff time, it's a different animal, right? So as long as you're in the dance, you can always there's always an opportunity to make a run, right? So who knows? But obviously for Ventura County, hopefully, they make a run at it as well. Haven't been to a Ventura County game. I mean, it's way too far for me to go over there, but still though, hopefully they have a good playoffs, going into it. But for sure though, at least they made it into the playoffs, which is a pretty big deal for them. But yeah, that's Ventura County, and I think that's it for Galaxy News. I don't think I'm missing anything unless you had anything that I forgot. Okay, then. So I think that's it for some Galaxy News, and now I guess we can talk about Houston, which is our upcoming game. It's not going to be this week; it'll be the next week. On October 19th, I believe is the game on a Saturday. Of course, yeah, Houston decision day. Still some implications that can happen for the Galaxy to locking up the first in the Western Conference. Obviously, you got to look at the LAFC game on hand, which is this week during the international break. But still, though, going into that game, we can both agree that we still got to go win it, regardless of what happens of that LAFC game. You still want to win in your last game of the regular season, going into the playoffs, having good form. And ultimately, you got to go get a result over there in Houston. So, how do you feel about the game going up against Houston? And what are your thoughts?
I feel pretty good about it. Honestly, Houston at home has actually struggled a lot this year. They've not been a very good home team. And we can clinch first in the West with a draw or a win, even if LAFC beats Vancouver, which hopefully Vancouver can get a tie or a win against LAFC, because if that happens, we clinch no matter what, and then this game means absolutely nothing. But, I mean, let's say that doesn't happen, then we have to go into Houston and get at least a tie to clinch. So, I mean, yeah, it should be interesting for sure. I'm hopeful we can do it. We definitely have the players to do it. We've seen the way our players have stepped up, like Peck and Pooch. So there's definitely reason to be confident. So yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting for sure. I really hope we get it done. That'd be absolutely massive for us. And yeah, we'll see what happens. Houston's obviously a good team. They play some good football. They have some good players. And they're going to want to beat us on decision day too. Obviously, that's been a matchup we've seen a lot of times. So, I mean, we'll see. It should definitely be interesting, but hopefully we're the ones that come out on top.
Yeah, definitely for sure. And honestly, decision day is going to be wild in terms of the West, because now everybody now the spots in the West are filled. But now we got to look at, all right, who's going to go in what spot, who ends up here, who ends up there. So there's going to be a lot of movement in the standings in terms of decision day. Same thing with the East. I think they still have two playoff spots on the line, or the essentially the play-in spots, for the playoffs. So they obviously have their side of the conference, and that's going to be interesting as well. And just in general, decision day is always going to be a wild day for MLS and for everybody. But ultimately, for the Galaxy, it'd be nice to get a result over there, get a win. Obviously, like I mentioned, you still got to look at the LAFC game a little bit. And I think a lot of people are going to, be focused on that because obviously you want to see what happens there. But still, though, regardless of the result of that game, we still got to go over there and get a result of our own. So I think really it'll be nice for them to get a result going into the playoffs, and being in good form. So for them, I think everybody's going to try, and of course Houston's going to try to win that game to possibly get higher up in the table and things like that, and to get in a better spot. But for the Galaxy, at this point you've clinched home field advantage at some point in the playoffs, but now it's just a matter of getting the whole Western Conference having the home field advantage for the whole time. So it's like that's a very important thing, and for the Galaxy, we've already seen it before. They've been great at home. So if they can get that spot, it's going to be massive for them, and for ultimately getting on the road to win another MLS Cup. So still going to be massive, still things to be played for, and I just hope it's going to be I hope we get that number one spot, because I think everybody wants us to get there at that point. But I don't know though. But still though, going to be an interesting game. Decision day is going to be wild. I think everybody's going to watch it. Everybody's going to be focusing on what happens there. And obviously, hopefully, we get a good result against Houston. But anything else you want to say about that game, or just in general about the team?
It'll be a good game for sure. It's going to be a battle between both teams, and like I said before, hopefully we're the ones that come out on top and get that number one seed down.
Yeah, hopefully that is the case, because it'll go a long way if we get it. So for sure, hopefully we get that number one seed for the Western Conference. So yeah, hopefully we go get that. But I think that's going to be it for the episode. Can't thank you guys enough for watching and listening. If you want to follow us on social media, go follow us. Go follow me at Insider Galaxy, Instagram, X. Go follow the Galaxy Central on on Instagram, and obviously, of course. It's great to have you back, man. It's been a while since we've done an episode together. So it's great to have you back, man. And honestly, it was fun. We went a long way, but honestly, I don't really care. It was great to have you back on here and talk about the team again. And obviously, hopefully we get to do more episodes, heading into the playoffs as well. So it's great, man. It's great to have you back here. But anything else you want to say to the listeners and the viewers before we go?
Yeah, you said it yourself. It's definitely great to be back here. I'm very happy to be back. Obviously, posting, being on here. Still always watch the team, still love the team. So definitely happy to be back here for sure.
Yeah, definitely for sure, man. Obviously, it's great to have you back. But so go follow us on social media and things like that. Be a friend, tell a friend about the podcast, whenever you're listening to this podcast. And I hope you all have a great rest of your day, rest of your night. And let's go get that number one seed. All right, thank you guys. And G's up.
7 words